The official Five Nights at Freddy's books are a subject that I've never really gone in depth on. Sure, I use them as evidence sometimes to reference them when making a point, but I've never really talked exclusively about the lore they contain or my opinion on them. Today, I'm going to set that right, with what will probably be my most controversial video yet, because the books give us information on the current main antagonist of the series that completely shatters everything we thought we knew about him. The leads I found in the books might change everything we knew about the Mimic and Glitchtrap, and connect their characters to past events in the franchise in a way we've never thought about before. So remember to subscribe because this theory is going to be wild. To start, I should quickly cover what FNAF books exist and which ones I'll be tackling today. The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise has 3 major book series apart from all the guidebooks and activity books. The Silverized novel trilogy, Fazbear Frights, a collection of Goosebumps-esque short stories, and Tales from the Pizzaplex, which is similar to Fazbear Frights but covers a different time period, the time period being the security breach era. Today, I'll be talking about Frights and Tales, since the novel trilogy has been talked about to death and I don't really find it interesting anymore. So I guess I should walk you through the overarching narratives going on in these 2 book series. Frights is by far the most interesting one of them all, with a huge interconnected storyline that spans 33 novellas and 11 epilogue-like Stitchwraith stingers. The main story here is being told in these stingers, where we meet the eponymous Stitchwraith, an endoskeleton infused with loads of agony that instantly kills anything it touches. But there's more to it than meets the eye. Inside the Stitchwraith are 2 souls, Jake and Andrew. Andrew is likely the one responsible for the instant death of anyone the Stitchwraith touches. This is because Andrew, unlike Jake, is extremely angry at someone who killed him. Before I start talking about why this stuff matters, I'll give a quickish recap of the overarching story the Fazbear Frights books are telling us. Now, bear in mind that we don't know if this happens in the same universe as the games or not, but I'll talk more about that later. Our story starts right after the fire we see at the end of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, where every animatronic and major player in the series burns to the ground and passes on. Except for one, William Afton. Firefighters and paramedics rush into the burning building and somehow save him, extricating him from the springlock suit and putting him in room 1280 of the nearby Heracles Hospital. Unfortunately for the staff, the man they're treating looks disgusting, like his organs are literally visible through the skin. They try to kill him multiple times, believing he's some kind of evil creature, but no matter what they do, he just can't die, as a young boy in an alligator mask scares off anyone who tries to kill him. The staff soon finds out that William has 2 distinct signals in his brain, as if there are 2 consciousnesses inhabiting him. They eventually call a priest who figures out William wants to be taken to the Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center, but when he takes the man there, he explodes all over a bunch of nearby Fazbear stuff in a burst of black goo. Almost definitely William's agony. This is what leads to the events of the rest of the Fright stories. Multiple Fazbear items possessed by William's agony go on to do terrible things to the protagonists of those stories. However, there's one thing trying to stop the agony-infested objects from doing any more harm. The Stitchwraith, a possessed metal endoskeleton wearing a mask and cloak. The Stitchwraith was created by Dr. Phineas Taggart, a scientist who studied the power of emotions, particularly agony, in an attempt to create life born out of pain. He succeeded, but the only thing he didn't succeed in was staying alive, as the Stitchwraith immediately killed him on sight. He brought the thing to life by injecting it with things that contained sources of agony, like a mirror that witnessed a man kill his whole family, pieces from a doll, and the battery of the fetch animatronic from the story of the same name. It's these last 2 objects that carry the essences of Jake and Andrew respectively. After killing its creator, the Stitchwraith goes out into the world and essentially becomes an urban legend. It's only later that Jake decides to purge all the agony he can find. There's a bunch of crazy stuff that happens after that I won't get into, but Jake succeeds in freeing Andrew's soul and defeats Eleanor, another villain of the Stingers, with them both sinking into an old ball pit at a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And if you're wondering, yes, it's the same ball pit from Into the Pit. But anyway, this is pretty much where the storyline ends. And a few years after the end of Frights, we got Tales, which, to be honest, had a pretty disappointing series of epilogues and a kinda messy overarching narrative revolving around the Mimic. But the series still had interesting correlations to the games. Instead of 11 canonical installments in 1 book of scrapped stories like Frights, Tales from the Pizzaplex only has 8 books and no additional scrap novella book. The epilogues revolve around a group of teens that get stuck in a hidden pizzeria under the Pizzaplex, as a homicidal endoskeleton called the Mimic killed every single one of them. That's it, that's what the epilogues are all about. But rather than further discuss the faults of these books, I want to cover the ideas that they introduce. More specifically, the fact that both of these book series have an endoskeleton as the main focus of their own overarching story. Yeah, it's a bit weird. But let me assure you, these 2 are connected. And oh boy, you're gonna hate me for this. That's right, I think that the Mimic and the Stitchwraith might be connected in some way, and it might mean a pretty major way too. Before the end of the Stitchwraith stingers, the Stitchwraith essentially gets its torso and lower body burnt by extreme heat before it sinks into the pit. Now, listen to the description we're given of the Mimic we see in Tales from the Pizzaplex. Quote, "It wasn't just a basic metal structure. Its steel frame was contained within a bulging collection of metal rods and curved plates. The skull was the only part of the endoskeleton that was shiny. The rest was dark and discolored, as if it had survived some kind of fire." End quote. Now, if you get what I'm alluding at, don't get riled up just yet. The Stitchwraith's body and legs are much sturdier than, say, in Endo 1. The frame is much stronger, and it would make sense that the head wouldn't be damaged since it would have been covered by the mask the Stitchwraith wore. That's right, I think the Stitchwraith Endo was reused as one of the many mimics we see throughout the franchise. Wait, one of the mimics? Well, theorists, the Mimic from the epilogues, the Mimic imitating Afton, and the Mimic in the Pizzaplex's code aren't the same Mimic. And this difference between the Mimics is what might divide the book continuity from the games. Let me explain. The Mimic in the books is very distinct from the one in the games. It's got a different body shape, what appear to be ear stumps coming out of its head, and other huge differences that set it apart from the physical Mimic endoskeleton from Ruin. The Mimic 01 program is a computer program created by Edwin Murray to, well, mimic things. It's much more intelligent than the endoskeleton and possesses much wider control of the Pizzaplex once it's inserted into the building's code. And Glitchtrap, or the Anomaly, likely an AI imitating William Afton, is a branch of the Mimic 01 code that got into the in-universe Help Wanted VR game. One of the longest standing questions in the FNAF theorist community regarding the Mimic is why it chose to replicate Afton specifically. Well, I'm going to try to answer that question right now, by talking more in depth on the Mimic and its connection to the Stitchwraith. My point is very simple. I think that there are two possibilities here about what the connection between the Mimic and the Stitchwraith is. One is much more likely than the other, but they're both worth discussing all the same. We know from Help Wanted that Fazbear Entertainment looked literally everywhere they could for old circuitry intact to use for their games. And if we're to assume the books exist in the same continuity as the games, it's pretty safe to also assume they'd find the Stitchwraith, or what was left of it. Remember that the Stitchwraith was filled with the agony injected into it by Phineas Taggart, and likely absorbed a lot of Afton's agony too. If any part of this endo got into the VR experience, it would undoubtedly affect the Mimic 01 code inside the game, and twist it to start mimicking Afton. However, there's another much wackier possibility. The Stitchwraith Endo is actually one of the Mimic Endos we see in either the epilogues of Fazbear Frights or Ruin. There's not much evidence to back this up, but the similarities I brought up earlier are eerily similar. I think it's also pretty likely that the Stitchwraith endoskeleton is an Endo 02. And guess what? There are some Endo 02s inside the blob. Just some fuel for thought. Now, the reason I think Fazbear Frights and Tales from the Pizzaplex are connected so closely is all because of two short stories in these collections, To Be Beautiful and Frailty. Both of these stories are very similar. In To Be Beautiful, a girl called Sarah finds an animatronic called Eleanor in a dump and rebuilds her, and in exchange the animatronic promises to grant her one wish. Sarah obviously chooses to be beautiful, and every morning she wakes up a bit more beautiful. But there's a catch. She always has to wear a heart-shaped pendant. One day her pendant falls off and she finds out that she's been completely replaced with junk and garbage, and Eleanor has been stealing her body parts at night. Frailty is about a girl called Jessica who also has a heart-shaped pendant. She uses the pendant to help sick kids at her job in a hospital. Long story short, the same thing happens to her as with Sarah, and she turns into a pile of scrap at the end of her story. So what does this mean? Well, I have the answer. Later on in the Stitchwraith Stingers, it's revealed that the pendant's power revolves around Remnant. If the exact same thing happens in both of these book series, I think it's safe to say Fazbear Frights and Tales exist in the same universe. As well as that, Jessica sees what appears to be the Mimic in one of her nightmares, practically confirming that Frailty takes place in the same universe as the other stories and tales. All this is really complicated and rambly, and for most of this theory I'm assuming that the books and games exist in the same universe. However, personally, I don't think this is the case. I think it's far more likely that the books and games are separate because the mimics in them are completely different and a bunch of other reasons. However, I want to make an exception for today's theory just to present a different point of view from the one I usually do. So, in conclusion, I think Fazbear Frights and Tales have to at least exist in the same universe as each other, thanks to all the connections I brought up earlier. And if we're to assume all the Glitchtrap stuff happens in the books universe, which is very likely, I think the Stitchwraith is what allowed the Glitchtrap virus to form. So maybe if the games are their own universe, there's also some kind of Stitchwraith parallel that allows this to happen. Or maybe the reason the Mimic is so violent is because of some agony in it messing with its code. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. You might have noticed that this theory is much more out there and probably a bit disjointed compared to some of my other ones, That's because I really want to start theorizing about the FNAF books, and I have a lot of different thoughts on them that I'll probably talk more about later. You also might have noticed that my voice or the microphone sounds a bit different. That is because I changed microphone, and for some reason my throat is really hoarse today. So yeah, the microphone is not perfect. I'm still working out the kinks, but it should be working better later on. But enough rambling. With that, friends, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, but most importantly, never stop overthinking.